Okay guys, welcome to our bean and tomato soup. This comes courtesy of Tracy Murphy, who's one of our clients, long-standing clients. So thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing this elaborate recipe with us. So what we're gonna need is what you see in front of you. We're gonna throw everything into a pot, let it do its thing, as most soups do. We're gonna start off by cutting up an onion. As per usual, I'll use my special ninja tactics here to get rid of the skin as quickly and rapidly as possible. Rapidly and quickly obviously being the same word. And I'm gonna just chop it coarsely. It doesn't have to be very diced or minced unless you want it that way. This is not gonna be blended afterwards. So if you want to, however small you want to go with the onions is totally cool. So my pot behind me is warming up, and I'm just about to throw some coconut oil in. Before I do that, there's a piece of garlic somewhere hovering around here that should be chopped up as well. Did I get it at the same time? I think I may have chopped it together with the onion without even realizing that. Well, that's pretty cool. 2 in 1. All right, so that's good to go. I'm gonna get the coconut oil going in there. Let's reduce the heat a little bit. Gonna give this a little stir, and we'll bring the onions. Actually, I'm gonna grab a little towel here so I can hold this properly. So again, if you have oven mitts, much more effective than towels. Just give this a little stir. So we want the onions to become translucent, which basically means see-through. I think I've spilt a few onions on the ground, but I'll just move those to the side for now. Nobody needs to know about that. All right, so next up we have we got a bowl of chickpeas that have been rinsed and soaked and all that good stuff in the water. So what I recommend with your chickpeas is that if you want to do them from scratch, dry beans or dry peas, sorry, it's going to take you at least a day. You have to boil them, let them sit, do all sorts of stuff. So just go for an organic canned thing of chickpeas, BPA free. There's a lot of really good ones out there, and that's probably your best and easiest bet. Next, we're gonna have some tomatoes that we'll just chop up, some kale, and some cabbage. Tracy calls for about 6 cups of water. I'm gonna do a little bit of the good old high sodium veggie broth and water combination. I just find that gives a bit more flavor to the soup. You can keep it at water if you like. So I'm just going to roughly chop the tomatoes here. The tomatoes will kind of loosen up in the pots as they get warm, and they kind of just fall apart. So in contrast to our fresh tomato soup that we made, which was blended, this one is not going to be blended. So now you have kind of a contrast of a blended tomato, non-blended tomato, and you can choose whichever one you like. Okay, so we're going to take some kale. I'm just going to take it off the stems. This has been all obviously washed. Got some basil as well that we're going to throw in a second. Okay, so I'm going to take the basil off. So when you think of tomatoes, think of basil. They're literally married, stuck at the hip, like white on rice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a little bit of the basil now, and then a little bit of the basil towards the end, just to preserve some of its aroma. Because remember, if you put it in too early on, it's going to get cooked and it's going to lose a lot of its, real oomph. So we'll do half and half. We'll just chop up the kale. So we're going to put all the veggies in first, and then we'll throw in the stock. So that's good. See how the onions are doing. good. And then we'll just kind of drop everything in. And the trick is not to get it on the floor. It's funny, my wife Amy, she's a tornado in the kitchen. When she makes stuff, it's like a tornado just destroyed everything. There's stuff all over the place, and I don't understand how she can work in that environment. So I'm a little bit more clean when I'm making my stuff, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, if you're making your stuff and you get it done and then you clean up afterwards and your house doesn't look like, like it got hit by a tornado, then it's all good. So I actually just shuttled in a bunch of the basil, and I didn't even realize that. So I don't think we've got basil left to add in at the end, but you know, it's okay. I think we'll survive, right? So just to finish off here, we're gonna add in some cabbage. So we'll add in, it calls for 2 cups of shredded cabbage. I'm just gonna thinly slice this out, and then I'm just gonna chop it up myself. I'll do the heavy lifting today on this one. And FYI, cabbage is one of the highest sources of glutamine, which is a really important amino acid for muscle repair as well as healing the gut lining. So if you've gut issues, which most of us do, some cabbage in your diet is definitely a good thing because of its contents, high content of glutamine. I'm just gonna throw out the core there. And it gives a bit of a fiery taste, right? It's got that bit of a fiery kick. And that's because it's one of the brassica vegetables, right? Like cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and broccoli and kale, which means that it's high in organosulfurs or sulfur-containing compounds. Remember, sulfur, if it's a little bit bitey, if it has a bit of a bite, it likely has that sulfur in there, and that sulfur is really, really good for you. So I'm gonna just shuttle that right over. And we'll give that a little stir. And then we'll finish off by putting in our chickpeas. And I've got about 2 cups, I should actually measure this out. So we'll go 2 cups vegetable stock, 2 cups regular water, and we'll see if we need more, then we can add it in. So just over 2 cups there. We'll add in our water. Okay. Put that in. Now I'm also going to throw in a little bit of red wine vinegar. This will add a little bit of flavor to this. Not too much. And there we go. So we'll, just before we finish, actually, we'll throw in some thyme. So we got basil, we got some thyme in there. And we don't need to really add any salt because the sodium from the vegetable broth is taking care of that. So there we go. Now it's just a waiting game, as you know. So soup's on. We're gonna cover this bad boy. We're gonna let it go for 20-25 minutes until it's as soft as you desire, and then we'll come back, check it out, serve it up, and give it a shot. The bean and tomato soup is all set to go. It's been simmering for about 15-20 minutes. So I'm gonna grab the ladle. That's what this thing is called. Forgot, I thought it was called a scoopy thingy-majiggy. So we're gonna grab a little bit of the soup, pour it into the bowl. And I personally enjoy soup a little bit more the next day. I just find that, you know, giving all those flavors the chance to sit together and get to know each other is a really cool thing. And then when you cook it up the next day, you evaporate more of the water out, and then it just condenses the flavors even more. So, you know, you'll have leftovers for sure, so you can just keep them in the fridge in a glass container. And there we go. So this is obviously pretty hot, but just having a smell, having a whiff of that is really, there's a lot of aromas coming out of that. Really, it's really nice. So I'm gonna let that sit for a few. And we've got, you know, our tomato, our chickpeas, kale, cabbage, awesome stuff in there. and I think you'll really enjoy this. So thank you, Tracy, for sharing this recipe. I think I'm really gonna enjoy this as well. And there we go, bon appetit.